The state immediately postponed a second execution that had also been scheduled for last night, at least for 2 weeks until they can figure out what happened, what went wrong. Joining me now is NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams and Huffington Post political editor Sam Stein, who's been following this intensively as well. Pete, the law is very clear. They had the legal right to execute these two prisoners, but there is an issue of cruel and unusual punishment, and these lethal injections, the meds used, are very much at issue.
They are, and this has been a furious legal battle in Oklahoma about whether the state could do this. What the lawyers for these inmates have been saying in cases that have bounced to the Supreme Court and back again is the states are having trouble getting the normal chemicals they use for lethal injection, so they're having to go to new suppliers and use these drugs in different combinations. The lawyers say we need to know who's making these drugs, what's in them, so that we can assess whether the execution is going to be well carried out. And the state Supreme Court cleared the way for these executions by saying no, these inmates, these condemned prisoners have no right to know who is making these drugs. And now the lawyers are saying, look what happens when you use an untested procedure.
Sam Stein, this is a national issue. There are a number of states and defense lawyers around the country saying that these lethal injections are no longer reliable and are cruel and unusual punishment and should be stopped by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a national issue. The actual support for death penalty is on the gradual decline. Pete made a very valid point, which is that because we're running out of supply of the commonly used chemicals to have these executions, people are looking for different cocktails of drugs. There's even been a movement to bring back firing squads in some states. But this is a huge issue now that we've seen another botched execution. Keep in mind, a botched execution happened in Ohio not too long ago, in which an inmate was made to wait 24 minutes or so before he died. And this is a huge problem facing the governor, in part because the state Supreme Court initially stayed the execution so they could figure out what was in the chemicals, and it was under pressure from the governor's office that they reversed their decision. She had ordered officials to go ahead with the execution anyway. A state representative in the state had threatened impeachment of the justices on the court. And so, yeah, now it's in the limelight.
And Locket's attorney, the inmate who died last night, but not from the lethal injection, this is Dave Autry, his attorney.
This was a horrible thing to witness. One of the things he said was something's wrong. He said man at one point. He kept trying to raise up. They wanted to hurry up and get it done with as little transparency as possible. This is what they get.
And, I mean, the fact is, from these eyewitness reports, not just the attorney, but the reporter as well, he did try to get up after he was supposedly sedated and receiving the lethal dose.
Or, according to other witnesses, at least was sort of twitching or spasming or something. Not clear exactly what happened. But here's the background here. 2008, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld lethal injection with 3 commonly used chemicals. They said it's not completely painless, but it seems to be better than the alternatives. The suppliers of those chemicals have slowly been saying, no, we're not going to provide these drugs anymore for lethal injections. They just don't want to be a part of it anymore. Either the makers in the U.S. either the makers in the U.S. aren't making them, or the suppliers overseas, where there's much greater opposition to the death penalty, won't send them into the U.S. So the states are having to go either to unknown suppliers or use older stocks that may be expired, or go to what are called compounding pharmacies, which will make the chemicals up, but who knows who the compounding pharmacies are. Now, 9 states have laws saying you can't know who they are, on the theory that if you make it public, they'll be subject to harassment by death penalty opponents.
And Sam Stein, you said you mentioned that the American people are less supportive than in the past of the death penalty. What do you see happening here politically?
Well, the governor is supposed to speak today to what happened, but I can imagine that there's going to be some intense political pressure in her state to explain what exactly went wrong, why she was pushing so strongly to see this execution through when there was questions about the chemical composition. But also, you have to keep in mind the timing of this is extraordinarily bad. It was just 2 days ago that a study came out that showed that 1 out of every 25 people on death row who have been executed are likely innocent. And so there's been a renewed spotlight put on this. I'm not sure how long it will last, frankly, but for the time being, we're having an important and national discussion over it.
Sam Stein, Pete Williams, thank you both so much, and stay with us right